You're welcome back to Afia TV News today, the discussion segment. And this afternoon, we'll be shifting our attention to something that's been recurring at Nigeria's airports, and that's the disturbing behavior of some passengers who either disturb the boarding process or they outrightly lose their senses inside the airplane. So either they get into a fight or they stop the plane from moving entirely. There was an issue with Kwam. There was an issue with Senator Oshimole. And most recently, you had Mr. Jollof and very dark man, Mr. Ose, getting into a fight inside an airplane in Asaba. What are the triggers for this disturbing behavior we are seeing now among Nigerian passengers, air travelers, if you like? To help us put this in perspective is Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa. He is the Executive Director, Lead Network Africa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex.
I'm sure you saw that. Just if they showed the video on,
Yeah,
on the screen.
I did.
How do you get into a fight in an airplane?
I think it's unruly, it's least expected, and then also it confirms the fact that usually there are no consequences. You know, anybody can walk away with anything, especially if you fall amongst the untouchables. You know, visibly in Nigeria, some people seemingly above the law, and I see the case as more like a reference. Because in the case of Comfort, the speed with which he was tried and was almost on her way, you know, to prison, you know, brought some concerns. So people raised up the one issue, and with all sense of fairness, right? I'd like to categorize these three major incidences that have really shaken the aviation industry this year. The one of Comfort, and then you now have two in one, the duo of VDM and Mr. Jollof, right? Okay, so if you look at it, you find out that the gravity, right, has been on the decline, right? The gravity, yeah, as much as the sensationalism has been on the increase. Like you discovered that the sensationalism around that of Palm 1 was not as much as that of Comfort.
That's right.
I mean, there were a lot of sensationalism, but the gravity, the offense was not as much as Palm 1, who tried to visibly disrupt a whole aircraft that was on move.
That's right.
For a very petty reason as a flax, right? He wanted to stop, you know. And then you now have the second category, you know, which was very sensational, and that has to do with Comfort, visibly confronting airline staff and all of the things, including efforts to, you know, to tame her, prove that Botiva, she was ready, you know, to stand everyone. And why this is the least of it all is that this has to involve two passengers, right? You know, who's been having some feud online and had the opportunity of meeting themselves and decide to square it out to the excitement and entertainment of some watching, because Nigeria is actually a very interesting environment.
Yeah.
Because with some people we feel threatened, some others saw that as, one of the very interesting things is that for some who were eyewitness and, you know, reported it live, they were tagging their name. I mean, you could see people owning copyright to the fight. and one could wonder why an adult, right, will sit, watch the fight and copyright it and say, you know what, you don't share this without...
all rights reserved.
All rights reserved. And I say, has it really got into that? And so, when you find out that in the case of Palm 1, no consequence, right, because this is someone visibly trying to stop a whole airline on the move. You're not going to compare that with someone on the flight. I mean, people have disembarked, right? And then she not engaged, you know, in fight with both the waiter and then some other, the aviation security that's tried to stop her. And now this time around, no confrontation, no trying to stop the pilot in motion or confront the airport officials, right? But now two passengers wanted to square it out. The challenge is, first, the act, and two, the environment where they did that is the least expected, right? But I can tell you regrettably, many Nigerians were entertained, and I've seen all manner of analysis some saying, okay, who really won in the fight?
Yeah. Who threw the biggest
Who
punches?
threw the biggest punches? And people were entertained, but then most Nigerians were not looking at something that was of greater concern. Number one, that if we've gotten to that point where there are no consequences, right? I don't want to imagine a point where a Nigeria may begin to try to make his way to the cockpit, right, to divert the plane. I'm telling you the honest truth, because these are the things. Yes.
If you ask him, he said that use some AI plugins to learn how to fly.
I mean, come on, right? Because if we've had like a Kwam, right, that's like the craziest. And for anybody to tell me that guy must go scot-free, come on. If the Nigerian state was able to forgive Kwam, the government really need now, right, to really give people enough reason for two things. Why such attitude is condemnable, and number two, why moving forward, right, if it has pardoned, the Nigerian state pardoned like a Kwam, right, why we must now resolve and say this is our standard and it doesn't matter who is involved, right? You are going to go down for it. Because for every case now, you always see the sensationalism, or if you didn't punish this one, then what's the rationale to punish it? And like I've identified, that the gravity of the cases involved has been on the decline, but the sensationalism has been on, you understand? National televisions also were playing out some of these videos, and the whole thing is now gaining more traction because first one has happened, second, third, so it's all building, right? But the question is, where do we really go from here if there are no consequences? Because tell me, is it that there are no passengers that get angry in other climes, maybe that don't have issues, maybe where they feel like their rights, right, were trampled upon, but that if you act anyhow, you see anyhow.
But then, in this instance, you can't say that the fight between Very Dark Man and Mr. Jollof was as a result of poor service of the airline.
Certainly not.
They have been fuming at each other. They have been exchanging, messages that will make this happen. So it was just something that was waiting to happen. Then someone just walked up and said, "You were looking for me. I am here. Slap me." This kind of thing.
Yes.
Very provocative behavior leading to a violent conduct inside an airplane.
Yes.
This wouldn't have happened in an airport in Washington or Dubai or Madrid. So why does it happen here?
Certainly not. There is really nothing that incentivizes bad behavior as much as no consequences, right? Because I am thinking, I'm really very curious, and sometimes life just happened the way it happens. Because if this guy struck a deal like when we were small, you strike a deal of maybe piampia to any place I see you with something, I hit you down and it becomes mine, right? These guys would have met anywhere. Perhaps if they met on the ground of the show, those that came there would have been entertained, because the deal is that any place I see you, I'm going to land you with a slap. And now I'm here. So
they could have taken it a notch higher.
Even when they were down.
Because there was an instance where, what's his name, Speed Darlington,
yes,
had to feature in a exhibition boxing bout with, what's the other young man that's a musician. They had to fix an exhibition fight. No,
okay.
They had to fix an exhibition fight so that they can even
people will be entertained, yes.
And in the process, they could have earned money doing that.
That's right.
But they didn't do that. They wanted to disrupt every other person's life. So what should be the consequences for this?
So normally, now, because I've seen people trying to cite, right, aviation rules, and I think at this particular point, given its proper interpretation, or some things like I see, okay, any act of violence, right, and then anyone who try to disrupt the aircraft, right, all of these things has to be properly. And then you also now talk about trying to stop those that are lawfully discharging their duties. Maybe either it's the air hostesses, right, or maybe even the airport security. So all of these are clearly spelled out. And I think that the law court is in a position to interpret and ensure that maybe this whole thing is not going to be done in such a way that they are going to be seen as either obstructing the movement of the airline, or maybe even altercation with airport authorities. Now, this is two persons who have unresolved issues, taking it up to that particular place. And honestly, maybe as entertainers, if I'm to get into a bit of their mind, I think they chose to do it where it's going to have the biggest sensationalism and attention, because I'm sure probably they may have met themselves either in the executive lounge before boarding, when they were still on the land side. For someone to leave the land side of the aircraft during the boarding process, right, and choose to come just right on the air side, right into the tarmac, right inside of the aircraft, just about taking off, right when even the passengers are already there, really shows that's like the height of it, right? It's an abuse on our sensibility. It's like more or less like I already know that nothing is going to happen. And even to make matters worse, when they were released, they also started making videos. In fact, in between the time that they were arrested, just in between, when they were deboarded from the aircraft, which was also very, very commendable, we're going to see like a video make a movie, make a video, right? I mean that he has chopped jollof rice and stuff like that, But beyond that, what is even more disturbing is that now they were arrested, yes, with also like now a continued, case. The matter has not been struck of it's there to get to court. But you see them making videos and then Jollof saying, whatever thing be the case, ensure you go to the gym, right? I mean, he's been able to prove himself to VDM and stuff like that. Now, what this tells is that these guys are not afraid of any consequences before, during, and after. To them, they understand, they can almost predict the Nigerian state. And I think it's one aspect that we need to, holistically, right, begin to create that culture that shows that nobody is above the law. And it has to start right from the political class, right down to everyone. Otherwise, we may get to a point where you begin to like have clash of powerful people, like we saw in the case of Wike and the top officer, right?
That's right.
And then before you know, it's now a case of even uniformed men getting involved. And the question is now, is government divided? It's government versus government, and who should have it more?
How do you think these activities, right from the activities of the one with the young lady at Ibom Air, and the one that happened yesterday, I think it was between yesterday or 2 days ago, with a very dark man and Mr. Jollof, how do you think this is affecting the psyche of the Nigerian flying public?
Well, I am more concerned of the public perceptions beyond the shores of the country. Interestingly, Nigerians, we love groove. Alex, the simple truth is that as much as I have decorum as a person, right? And I've been on platforms across the globe, whether it's United Nations engaging with the US government and some governments of the world. But if I was there personally, I may enjoy that fight. That's the Nigerianness in me. But the diplomat in me may say, no, this should not be so. So I think that one very thing we need to begin to do as a nation is to conscientiously, right, reorient ourselves and reacculturate ourselves to love the things that should be loved, and the things that, because look at like in the case of what happened between Weekend, an average Nigerian, perhaps the president may have even enjoyed, what happened, with all due respect. But I can tell you, the Nigerianness in us tells us that beyond maybe trying to sound politically right, there may be a part of me saying, but why were they holding VDM that way? Why couldn't they allow him, right? So some things could be said for the optics. But we know Nigeria has dealt with every one of us that we begin to love some things that ordinarily we shouldn't love, that should irritate us. But beyond that, someone that is watching that in elsewhere, looking at that, this is happening right inside the airplane, will just be like, come on, why should this happen? Are there no regulations, right? Because you are talking about like where you should have reasonably.
Though I have to admit, I've seen videos of fights inside foreign airplanes, but what I can't immediately ascertain is which country that is. I've seen fights inside airplanes of different colors and
of course, even the nationalities involved.
Yeah,
because
sure.
like an average, you understand, citizen.
Because I mean, an airplane at a particular point in time might be flying inside England, but a lot of the people inside the airplane might not be dominant.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Because it all depends on where the aircraft is flying in from, right? So you also have people like people, and that's why, like, I mean, when foreign media reports on issues, right? Even if you're already a citizen, if you're not like a first-class citizen, like, I mean, originally, ancestrally, they could say something like, a British citizen of Nigerian origin, you know, just to tell you that, you know, if you are truly British,
you where you belong.
You know, you're not expected
to remind you where you're coming from.
So I think the problem would have just, because you see people even in public events display this. How about the National Assembly, right? Haven't you seen fights? Haven't you seen honorable and distinguished fellows scaling the fence? So there's really no place in Nigeria, right, you know, that is free of like such kind of, you know, thing. So if we are to want to actually address some of this recklessness and lack of decorum, it has to start from, you know, from top to bottom, right? We need to see that level of decorum, you know, as something that maybe when you come in public places, and especially places where there should be zero tolerance, right, for such unruly behavior. Because my fear, and I pray that never happens, right? You know, but there's something about such unruly behavior, it builds up. We don't ever get to the point, right, where maybe someone tries to like hijack the ruler, control the, you understand? Not as a terrorist, but through acts of terrorism, which we encourage as a nation, right? You know, if you can have like one, I don't know whether that has happened any close to any nation, where someone, a passenger, who want to stop, you understand? I mean, an aircraft that was, I mean, like under normalcy, right? I mean, I remember like one time I was at the, what is it called? The executive lounge, and I was talking to a radio station, a national radio station owned by the government. And so I didn't know that they were already boarding. Just 15 minutes, the aircraft was still on air, but they said that since the pilot has closed the door, I can't enter again. And brother, I pleaded. I didn't file like Oshomole. We even forgot the one of Oshomole who said, we should also add him, right? Yes. You know, it's all part of it. And he's a senator.
Yeah, he's a senator.
He's a senator.
He disrupted the services at the ticketing.
You understand? He disrupted, and I mean, it was all pleading. Who are you? I mean, I mean, you could see like the case of a senator in the US, right? Who was handled properly by security. He was telling them, I'm a senator. To the US, they are not going to listen to that. I'm sure you saw that about 2 months ago, right? I mean, the senator wanted to act anyhow, and they held him. He was telling him his constituency. They said, don't you know me? You understand? I'm a senator. And to them, they were not listening, because to them, it's all about the law.
He's just an American.
You understand? I mean, you can't be above the, you understand? But here, in fact, before you say a senator, some people say, that's a senator. And what that simply signals is that these are among the people that are above the law, right?
I mean, just before we have a couple of minutes, Palm One was given a 6-month span from flying. And
which has been lifted, of course. He can fly now. No consequences, absolutely.
So, meaning, if that is the case, another person can actually come and stand on the tarmac and stop another plane.
Honestly.
From taxiing.
I mean, that's exactly what he did, right? And the simple truth, you know, where justice and fairness goes together, what you do to one, you can do to all. So, if someone exhibits a certain behavior and you punish the person, then that becomes a standard and a template that if you do this same thing, you are going to face this. But if there is no legal precedence, right, the person that did that went free, then, of course. Now, just to make a quick reference, in the case of Ike Akwaramadu, right, I mean, you know that since 2015, that law came into place in the UK. No person anywhere had broken that, right? Now, but the UK didn't say, since Ike is the first person, let's free him. You understand? They know that if you don't handle this matter well, I mean, the likelihood of it repeating, and as reasonably expected, I mean, there, you are senator this, you are president. We've seen in such nations, whether you're a former prime minister, they don't send you, right? I mean, if you commit a crime, there are clearly defined ways to address that. But in the Nigerian case, it looks like the law, eventually those that face it are those that maybe you are unprivileged, right? You're unfortunate Nigerians. But I mean, if you have like a kind of godfathers, right? You are free. You can break Nigeria law and you are free as the bird. Those that, in fact, some people who you know with greater crime will threaten to use that same judicial system to imprison you for committing a lesser crime and for trying to challenge
you to go to court.
You know, that kind of thing. So it's a challenge.
I have to thank you so much, Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa, the Executive Director, Lead Network Africa. Thank you so much for your analysis this afternoon
You're most welcome.
on the news today. Thank you for staying with us on the news today. Do follow us on all social media platforms at Afia TV Official. My name is Alex Obodo. Good afternoon.